Welcome in. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LLCSW, and this is episode 25. We have information in the show notes. If there's anything you're looking for, I would check there first. We like to give descriptions of what the episode's going to be about, and that's also where we would put research links if you are looking for those. So feel free to reach out and ask for them, and that's where they will be if you want them. We have videos of the episodes on YouTube and Spotify, and we will also share clips on social media. That way we can get the whole episode out there in these various channels, and we can also provide little bite-sized pieces from the episode so you guys can still benefit from them, have little reminders if you've already heard the episode, and anything in between. The podcast itself is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and if you'd like it somewhere else as well, just let me know and I'll get it up there too. Make sure to follow us, subscribe, click the bell to get notified on YouTube to get new content as it comes out. If it is helpful in any way for you, make sure to like it, love it, favorite it, share it with somebody, leave a review. All of that stuff is super helpful. Our main goal is just getting this out there to everyone best we can, trying to help people out. So now let's talk a little bit about who could benefit from this episode. A lot of people freeze when it's time for action or find themselves running away, avoiding things, pushing things off, all that kind of stuff when, the pressure's on. So this is a great episode for anybody that runs into those problems or has those struggles. If there's anyone in your life that you can think of, make sure to send them the episode or just let them know about it. And if that describes you a little bit, then this is the perfect place to start, and we'll jump into some things to hopefully help out with it all. At the same time, though, this is not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. It's purely educational. The goal of this is to spread awareness, put out content for you guys to give a shot or know where to go and kind of point in a direction to go get what you need. But if you need something like therapy or medical treatment, make sure to go get it. This is not a replacement for that. On top of that, I make it a point to give you actionable tools to find success in your life, and it's all evidence-based. They're not just random things. The reason for that is I want to make sure it works for you guys. I know your life is busy and you got a lot going on, and I also don't want to give you advice that may not help out and may actually make things worse. So I make sure this stuff is backed up by research and evidence, and that it's really supported in a lot of different ways before I let you guys know about it. So hopefully these things are helping. And if this is your first time listening, make sure to give some of these things a shot and see how it goes for you. If you have any questions, anything you would like me to cover, anything you want me to go back into in future episodes, anything at all, make sure to reach out to me. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can email me at tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name is spelled Mahler. You can text or call at 775-561-0056. We have our Instagram and TikTok where we are building some communities that I'd love to have you guys be a part of. And those names are the same for both Instagram and TikTok, which is Premier_Performance_Reno. We also have the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page with the same name, which is Premier Performance LLC for both of those. So make sure to jump on board. And then we also have our Twitter or X account, which is at Premier Reno LLC. On top of all that, you can also check out our website where we have a list of all of our services, what we have to offer to the community in general, and there's also more clips and podcast access and all that kind of stuff there. So check it out, see what you think. If there's anything you want to say, you can also reach us through the website too. And that website is www.premierperformancereno.com. So today we're going to cover performance anxiety. We're going to get into what it is, how to deal with it, how to manage it, and how to make sure to get it out of your way so you can find success with whatever you're doing. Before we get into that, though, we're going to start with our brain activity. The brain activity today is called the Micro Performance Challenge. So the first step is to create a small performance task. Do something mildly anxiety-inducing right there in the moment, wherever you are. And if you're not able to do something right now, that's okay. Save it for later. An example would be give a 60-second speech about a weekend to somebody, recite a poem, a rap, or a quote to a group or to somebody in the household or wherever you are. Do a push-up challenge or a balancing exercise, role play, maybe introducing yourself to a group or, strangers, whatever it might be, just something that's going to create a little bit of anxiety for you. Once we elicit that anxiety response, we want to rate the anxiety before, during, and after the event, whatever we are doing. So we want to do that on a 0 to 10 scale. So maybe my anxiety before doing the thing is like a 3 because I'm just thinking about it a little bit. While I'm doing it, maybe it goes up to like a 6. And then after it, maybe it goes down to like a 1 or a 0 because it feels better and there's relief. So you want to notice it and rate these things before, during, and after. With that, you also want to draw awareness of physiological symptoms like heart rate, breath, muscle tensions, thoughts. Like I'm going to look stupid, anything that might come up for you. You want to write those things down. Remember, writing these things down is always going to help more than just thinking about it. So try and write it down. Write down everything you're feeling, all the symptoms that went along with it, all the thoughts, all the emotions. After that, you want to apply regulation skills. Use skills in real time. It could be skills like distress tolerance skills we've talked about in past episodes, emotion regulation, any kind of tool that we have talked about before. Just use a regulation strategy to help calm yourself down. You could use box breathing, you could use pace breathing, you could use grounding like the five senses check-in where you're thinking about, things you feel, see, smell, taste, all that kind of stuff. You could reframe some thoughts like this adrenaline is helping me perform instead of I'm about to fail, kind of setting yourself up for success and really aligning yourself with the situation. And this doesn't mean we're going to get rid of the anxiety altogether, but we might set ourselves up in a way where now we can take it on and handle it a whole lot better on ourselves. After that, we want to repeat the task. Do the same performance task again, whatever it is we chose in that step 2 when we want to elicit the anxiety response through doing something mildly anxiety provoking. So you want to do it again and compare anxiety levels. You want to highlight the exposure and the skill use equals reduced anxiety and increased confidence. So when we are showing ourselves something over and over again, and we're using a skill that's working or helping us, and that's what you want to highlight for yourself is what you're doing and what's working so you make sure to keep doing it. It tends to lead to reduced anxiety and an increased confidence in our situation or even in ourselves. So we want to keep exposing ourselves to it. There's always, positivity and putting ourselves into situations over and over again. We just adjust, we get better with it, things seem less scary. That's one thing we got going for us as humans is we're really adjustable, really adaptable. And then make sure that the skill use is just kind of building us up as well, because these tools, these skills are out there for us to use and take advantage of and find benefits from. So let's make sure to do that. After all that, you want to kind of finish things up by processing and maybe assigning some homework for yourself to do to kind of keep building on top of it. So we want to ask ourselves, what did you learn about yourself? Maybe you learned how you handled a certain situation or how you respond to stress or something that works for you that you didn't know worked before. Just what did you learn about yourself in the situation? You also want to create these micro performances often to keep practicing, whether it's the same one you already did today or it's something totally new. But you want to keep putting yourself out there, keep pushing yourself, and you're going to slowly get more and more used to just that performance piece and not have the anxiety get in the way of it all. That could be like asking a stranger for directions, speaking up first in a meeting or a class, posting a short video on social media that you've wanted to post but you've just held on to for weeks, maybe months. You share an idea in a group, even if you're nervous, you could journal on like what you would do or what anxiety was feeling like as you're going through it. So even if it is feeling a little too much to put yourself out there like those things, you could always start small and start with journaling, but you want to keep pushing yourself to get out there and do these things. We don't want to just get stuck in some of the first steps or the beginning steps where things are pretty minimal. We want to keep pushing ourselves forward and keep getting more and more exposure with these things. This activity works because it mimics the actual physiology of performance anxiety versus just talking. So it shows proof that skills change the experience, and that builds up the confidence in the skills and in ourselves to manage hard situation. And it builds graded exposure so that we stop avoiding it and it feels easier and easier to go after it and give it a shot. It's sometimes doing that together or with somebody trusted, maybe even a therapist, can be helpful, especially if it's really hard to get started on that first one. But once we get going, we can build that momentum and just keep building on top of it and keep going. Because typically things get easier as we do them, not harder. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think. If it's helpful, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. If you're struggling with it, let me know. I'd love to help you figure it out and see what we can do to adjust it in a way that it works for you. So don't be afraid to reach out and contact us. Now let's jump into it. What is performance anxiety? Performance anxiety, also known as stage fright, is the fear or worry about one's ability to perform adequately. It usually leads to emotional distress and physical symptoms. This anxiety can manifest in various situations such as public speaking, sports, live performances, or even work-related tasks. Performance anxiety is a type of social anxiety that occurs when someone is worried about being judged or evaluated negatively by others during a performance, whatever that performance might be. It can range from mild nervousness to severe anxiety that impairs performance. It's common to experience some anxiety before a performance, but it becomes problematic when it interferes with your ability to perform or causes significant distress. So there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a spectrum on performance anxiety as well. It's not just straight up terrible and horrible. It could be kind of mild and not too bad, and maybe not completely overwhelming, and it's something we can overcome over and over again. The causes of it, the reason it happens, tends to be fear of judgment or criticism, perfectionism, past negative experiences, a lack of confidence, or just going through so many stressful situations you feel like you can't handle it, you feel kind of overwhelmed. Some examples of this with like public speaking would be a fear of speaking in front of an audience, even a small one. With sports, it might be anxiety during competition, affecting performance, maybe throwing up before a game or being so anxious in the moment that you forget what you're supposed to do. With live performances, it might include musicians, actors, and dancers experiencing stage fright. With work, it might be anxiety about presentations, meetings, or deadlines. And there's other aspects of life it could be connected to as well. Those are just some basic examples that come around pretty often. So now let's give a little hypothetical story about what it looks like. Okay, so this is just an imagined story so you guys can understand what this looks like in experience, and it might connect back to an experience you've had before because this is a pretty common experience. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you know exactly what you need to do, you've practiced, you've prepared, but when the moment arrives, your mind goes blank and your hands tremble and your voice shakes? This is often the hallmark of performance anxiety. Let's imagine a situation with Emily, who is a bright, articulate student who has always excelled in academics. She's been invited to present her research project to a panel of esteemed professors and fellow students, a significant step in her academic journey. And Emily knows her research inside and out. She spent countless hours gathering data, meticulously analyzing it, and crafting a compelling presentation. She's rehearsed in front of her mirror, timed her speech, and anticipated potential questions, yet as the presentation date draws closer, a familiar knot of anxiety tightens in her stomach. On the day of the presentation, despite a good night's sleep and a healthy breakfast, Emily's heart races as she walks towards the lecture hall. Her palms are sweaty, her mouth feels dry, and she can't shake the feeling that she might forget everything she knows. She just starts doubting herself. As she gets there and steps up to the podium, her carefully prepared notes seem to blur before her eyes. She takes a deep breath, trying to slow her racing heart. She begins to speak, but her voice trembles slightly, and she finds herself focusing on a few sympathetic faces in the audience, avoiding direct eye contact with the critical eyes of the panel. A moment of hesitation or slight stumble over a sentence sends a wave of panic. She thinks, I'm messing this up. They're judging me. I'm not as prepared as I thought. This internal monologue, a common symptom of performance anxiety, further disrupts focus. Even though Emily answers some questions successfully and delivers most of her presentation accurately, she feels like she had failed. She feels embarrassed and worries about the impact of her academic reputation. The story highlights key aspects of performance anxiety: the fear of judgment and negative evaluation. Emily was worried about what the professors and students would think of her performance. She also experienced physical symptoms like the racing heart, trembling voice, and sweaty palms. They're all classic physiological responses to anxiety. There was also cognitive symptoms. Negative self-talk with difficulty concentrating further hindered Emily's ability to perform at her best. This impact on her self-esteem, the intense feeling of not meeting one's own or others' expectations, can overshadow even a relatively successful performance, and we could beat ourselves up for things even though it went well and we won whatever we were looking to do. Emily's experience is not unique. Many, including seasoned professionals like Adele, Emma Stone, or Stephen Colbert, have publicly shared their struggles with performance anxiety. However, performance anxiety can be managed. Learning to reframe negative thoughts, practicing relaxation techniques, and building confidence through preparation and experience can help individuals overcome the fear of performing. Now let's talk a little bit about why do some people choke under pressure while others thrive. Some people thrive under pressure while others choke due to a combination of individual differences in personality, cognitive processes, and the way they perceive and react to high-stakes situations. There's a few factors involved. The first one being personality and cognitive traits, anxiety and self-consciousness. Individuals with higher levels of anxiety and self-consciousness tend to be more susceptible to choking. They're already kind of set up to fall into this trap. A fear of judgment and negative consequences can also trigger the fight or flight response and impair performance. That's one of the first episodes we talked about with the threat system and how that ended up getting in our way. It shuts down multiple aspects of our brain. It impacts our performance because it sends us into that fight or flight reactionary mode. and it just gets in our way, and we get a flood of adrenaline and a whole bunch of other things. So that could be a big factor. We can also question one's own ability and skills that can disrupt the performance. You're kind of like doubting yourself, questioning if you can do it while you're going through it. Some people may overthink and become overly self-conscious under pressure, disrupting automatic processes and leading to errors. This is kind of when we mess up, when maybe we've done the thing 100 times or even 1,000 times. And it's not that we can't do it, we just put so much pressure on ourselves in that moment that we fail. There's also individual differences in stress hormone regulation. Some individuals naturally regulate stress hormones better, leading to more stable performance under pressure. Sometimes it is just built on our nature and how we were built genetically and hormonally. There are also situation factors and perceptions that have an impact as well. The importance and the stakes of the situation. High stakes situations can trigger a stress response, especially if the individual perceives the situation as a threat. Like if you're looking at a situation as kind of part of your identity, where like if I lose this game, that means I'm a failure, it's going to make that game even more intense and harder to deal with because you're taking it almost personally and it triggers that stress response. There's also a perception of challenge. Individuals who view high pressure situations as challenges rather than threats tend to perform better. We've talked about that before because that challenge versus threat aspect is important in all areas of life, not even just performance. But this is a big aspect of it as well. So make sure to look at these things as challenges and not as threats because it's going to build us up and it's going to help us handle it even better. Preparation and familiarity is also important in this as well. Adequate preparation and experience can help individuals cope with pressure by building confidence and reducing anxiety. Just the act of practicing, doing it over and over again. This is why practice is involved with almost any competition that you do, because if you practice at it, it gets easier, it gets better, and it kind of reduces the anxiety going in, which could hinder performance. Environment and mental factors are big as well. The environment, including the presence of an audience or the nature of the task, can influence performance. Sometimes when the lights are on and the pressure is there, we have trouble, taking care of the task or doing whatever the thing is, but we could do it all of the time on our own. It's just once we got those eyes on us, all of a sudden it's different. That might be giving a speech. Maybe we do it at home with our family and everything's good and it's easy and it feels nice, but then you get in there and you have your whole class looking at you and now all of a sudden it's different. We also have psychological mechanisms. Distraction and overthinking is usually heavily involved. Increased pressure can lead to distraction, overthinking, and disrupted attention, hindering performance, and our mind kind of floats off and focuses on other things, leading to more problems. Self-focused attention. If we excessively focus on one's own actions and movements, we can disrupt that automatic process because we're overthinking it and getting too caught up on it. There's also a cognitive bias. Individuals may develop a bias towards negative outcomes under pressure, leading to self-fulfilling prophecies, like I always lose, I never finish games, whatever it is. We're kind of setting ourselves up for that failure. We could thrive under pressure, though. Confidence and control is big. Individuals who thrive under pressure often have high levels of confidence and a sense of control over their performance. There's also a challenge mindset. They view high-pressure situations as opportunities for growth and success, looking at it as a challenge versus a threat. Again, it's a very important way to look at life. Emotional regulation skills. They're able to regulate their emotions and maintain focus despite the pressure. One of our last episodes goes into emotional regulation skills, so make sure to check that out. There's a lot of good stuff in there. You can take those tools with you as you go into these battles and into these competitions, or just getting things done and reaching for that success in your life. Mental skills training can help a lot too. Techniques like mindfulness, visualization, and positive self-talk can help individuals develop resilience and improve performance under pressure. In essence, while some individuals are naturally more resilient to stress, anyone can learn to manage pressure and perform better by developing mental skills, adopting a positive mindset, and understanding the psychological mechanisms involved. With all that being said, let's talk more about who this does impact. Performance anxiety or stage fright impacts a wide range of individuals and situations. While it's commonly associated with athletes and performers, it can affect anyone who experiences pressure to perform well in front of others or in evaluative settings. This includes students, musicians, actors, public speakers, even people in everyday situations like job interviews or social gatherings. Let's break it down a little bit. Athletes tend to deal with sports anxiety. Athletes of all levels, from youth to professional, can experience anxiety related to performance, particularly during competition. And this is one of those things that I kind of specialize in. So if there is any difficulty with sports anxiety directly, feel free to let me know and I can help out with that. There is also an aspect with athletes of perfectionism and identity. Athletes who place high importance on winning or whose identity is closely tied to their sport may be more susceptible because when it starts impacting our identity, it feels more like a threat and starts hitting us harder. There are specific sports that also bring up more anxiety than others. Some sports, like those involving individual performance in high pressure situations, may naturally lead to greater anxiety. If you're the only one out there versus having 30 people out there, it might hit you completely differently because you're putting more pressure on yourself. You can't hide in the crowd as much. This also hits performers. Usually, these performers contain people like musicians, actors, dancers. These individuals often face performance anxiety in front of audiences, maybe even the camera. Public speaking. Many people experience anxiety when speaking in front of groups. I'm sure lots of you felt that going up to do a presentation in class. I know not a lot of us really enjoy doing those things, but the more we do this stuff, the easier it gets. Students deal with this a lot, like I was saying. For exams and presentations, students can experience performance anxiety during exams, presentations, or other academic evaluations. There's also social pressure. Being evaluated by peers and teachers can trigger anxiety by itself, and that could be just raising your hand in class. For professionals, this can happen with job interviews and again with presentations. Job seekers and professionals can experience performance anxiety in interview settings and when presenting at work. Public speaking in the workplace, such as presentations, meetings, and other situations where they are evaluated, can trigger anxiety. Anytime there could be that judgment, it usually brings this stuff up. It can also happen in just our everyday situations, like social gatherings. Even social interactions and gatherings can trigger anxiety for some individuals, even if it's with friends or family or people we've known for a long time. It is also pretty common in dating. The pressure to make a good impression can lead to performance anxiety where we're overthinking it, we're getting caught on things, maybe we're getting too stuck up on little parts of it or having even the physiological responses that we don't want. So let's talk about what performance anxiety feels like so you could better recognize it when it shows up in your life and better take care of it. There are some common symptoms that come up more than others. The physical symptoms are racing heart, shaking, blanking out, racing heart, sweating, trembling, nausea, dry mouth, muscle tension, rapid breathing. Just kind of the body getting a little activated, lots of things kind of responding. There's also cognitive issues that pop up, such as negative self-talk, like I'm the worst, I can't do this, that kind of thing. There's just worry in general, fear of failure, difficulty concentrating, memory problems, perfectionism, self-comparison, comparing to other people doing the same thing as you or thinking what others would have done. We can also have behavioral symptoms pop up, such as avoiding performance situations. It could be fidgeting or pacing or having difficulty making eye contact. So be aware of what your body is doing too. At the same time, we also want to differentiate between normal nerves versus debilitating anxiety because there is a difference. The distinction between normal nerves before performance and debilitating performance anxiety lies primarily in the intensity, duration, and the impact on a person's ability to function. So let's break it down. Mild performance anxiety is usually caused by typically a transient reaction to a specific challenging situation, like a job interview, a presentation, or performance, where there's going to be some kind of evaluation. Symptoms, like we talked about, could include increased heart rate, rapid breathing, dry mouth, trembling hands, sweaty palms, nausea, and self-doubt. The duration of it could generally subside once the event begins or shortly after. Maybe you're giving a presentation, you're feeling these things. Once you go sit down afterwards, you feel a lot better. It may cause temporary discomfort and can even be beneficial by increasing alertness and focus. However, it typically doesn't prevent a person from performing the task. You can still do the thing, it just doesn't feel good. To manage it can often be managed with strategies like deep breathing, positive visualization, and thorough preparation. And there's a lot of different skills and tools you can use. Just go back through some of these past episodes and we'll talk about more towards the end of the episode too. If it's more debilitating performance anxiety, it goes beyond typical nervousness and often involves an exaggerated, unhelpful stress response where the sympathetic nervous system overreacts. It can be fueled by fear of failure, unrealistic expectations, a lack of confidence, or negative past experiences. While similar to normal nerves or just that mild performance anxiety, the symptoms are more severe and intrusive, including panic attacks, freezing during performance, difficulty concentrating, memory lapses, avoidance of situations altogether that trigger anxiety, and maybe even fainting. The duration of it can be persistent and overwhelming, sometimes lasting for months before an event, where we're just dreading it and worrying about it and stressing about it. Its impact can significantly hinder performance. It could impact career advancement, relationships, and overall quality of life. It may lead to procrastination and burnout. And this is why I like pushing people to deal with these things and manage it and get what you need, because these things can ruin so many things in our life if we just let it stay there and if we feel fearful of it. Let's not avoid it, let's take care of it. To manage it, it usually requires more intervention than normal nerves or that mild performance anxiety that might be needing to work with a therapist or get something done, like a certain type of therapy or tool. Still, using the skills and the strategies are going to help, even if they don't fix it altogether, and you might still need more intervention too. In summary, mild performance anxiety is a temporary situational reaction to stress that typically doesn't stop someone from performing. Debility performance anxiety, on the other hand, is a more severe and persistent response that can significantly impair a person's ability to function and pursue their goals. If you find that performance anxiety is negatively impacting your life, it's essential to seek professional help to learn effective coping mechanisms and strategies. So make sure you get what you need. Again, this is not a replacement for therapy. If that's what you need, go get it. Now let's talk a little bit about how common performance anxiety is. It is very common and can affect people in various situations, not just in performance settings like we've talked about. It's estimated that 50 to 70% of professional musicians experience compromised performance due to anxiety, according to a study. So this isn't even just saying people experience performance anxiety by itself. It's that it gets so bad that it actually impacts their performance. And that's a huge number, 50 to 70%. That's at least half of all professional musicians. So there's a good chance that your favorite musician has gone through this performance anxiety before and it has impacted their performance. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe hundreds of times. Research indicates that 10 to 40% of students experience test anxiety at some point in their journey through school. Performance anxiety is also common among athletes, and it's estimated to impact 20 to 34% of elite athletes. So we're talking professional level athletes, not just your common everyday level of athlete or even college level athletes. These things are impressive and intense, but this study looked at just professional level athletes. Additionally, 9 to 25% of all men and 6 to 16% of all women experience performance anxiety in their own relationships, whether that be having a conversation, whether that be sexual activity, whether it be confronting an issue or holding boundaries, anything that could be involved. It can show up in a lot of different ways in our life. Performance anxiety can manifest at any age and in various situations. It might show up in a situation where before you were totally fine and it never bothered you, but all of a sudden it started to. These things don't have to be there the whole time we've ever done the thing. They can show up later. It's usually connected to when an individual feels pressured or to perform or to be evaluated. It's not limited to professional settings, but can occur kind of anywhere. Let's break it down a little bit of some places where it could happen. In the workplace, we talked about presentations, meetings. It could also happen with deadlines or project completions. Maybe it doesn't have to do with something directly, it's just getting something done. That can always get into our way and cause issues as well, and sometimes we push these things off. With sports, it could be competitions or games like we talked about, but again, it could also be training sessions. It doesn't have to be right under the lights. It could be just getting out there and trying the thing, even if we're all by ourselves. Social situations, it could be impacting us during public speaking or attending social gatherings or even just eating in public. Think of how many people out there struggle with just going out to eat food on their own, where they struggle and need someone else to come with them, and they're just so afraid of being seen like that or just being out there like that, feeling vulnerable. It can also impact us while performing at arts, like playing music or acting or dancing, like we've talked about. We got academic settings, like students with taking tests or giving presentations. It can also happen in driving and other skills, like parallel parking or other situations where one might feel judged or evaluated. If we get into our head about driving and how we're driving, what other drivers on the road might think, and that might cause issues. Performance anxiety often stems from the fear of judgment or failure, and as we kind of talked about, it can kind of show up anywhere in life. So we got to be aware of this, and we got to take care of these things and not let it build up in the background, because it could be pretty debilitating, and it could get in the way of you doing something that's really important in your life. To recognize it, there's a couple things you can do. We can do a mini reflection and think of a time when your body reacted like you were in danger, even though you weren't, and look for the symptoms to just see if they're around. So reflecting on your past, like what things did I feel, what thoughts did I experience, those kind of things when I had that anxiety, And then I take all that information, maybe I recognize those patterns, and I look for it moving forward and see when it shows up for me. And when it does show up, when I start recognizing it, then I can start doing things about it. Recognition is the first step. Once we notice something's happening, we can do something about it. So keep an eye out for those physical symptoms, those cognitive symptoms, the behavioral symptoms we all talked about. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the episode. If you don't remember, just go back to that. But make sure to try these things out and reflect on it and see what does your body do in these times so you can better recognize it and get on top of it instead of letting it control you. Performance increases with arousal up to a point, and then it starts to decline. This comes from the Yerkes-Dodson law. The Yerkes-Dodson law states that performance improves with increased arousal up to a certain point. So as we get more aroused, more amped up, more hyped up, it's increasing. That performance gets better, it gets better. But then at a certain point, if we get too hyped up, too aroused, too amped up, then it starts to decline, meaning that too much excitement or anxiety can actually hinder performance. So we have to find the sweet spot. It's all about balance, just like we've talked about before. Most of life is about balance. So there are some key points in this we can keep in mind. The optimal level of arousal. There's an ideal level of arousal for optimal performance, which varies depending on the task complexity. Like if you're going out to just punch a punching bag, you could get a whole lot more aroused than trying to do a math problem because you just need more logic and less emotion in these times. So sometimes we got to amp ourselves up, but we got to recognize the situation and see what we need. And this is also different for everybody. Some people work really well being super amped up. Some people do not handle being amped up at all very well. So let's be aware of who we are, where we're at, and try things out. It's a lot of trial and error. With simple tasks versus complex tasks, it's very different. For simple tasks, higher levels of arousal can be beneficial as it increases focus and alertness, like hitting a punching bag. However, for complex tasks, too much arousal can lead to distraction and decreased performance, such as math tests, like I talked about. Performance anxiety. When anxiety levels become too high, it can fall into the over-arousal range, so negatively impacting performance. And this is when it gets past that point of just like mild performance anxiety, and it's now hindering what we're doing and getting done, and we might need to come at it with some stronger skills or tools. So we can apply the Yerkes-Dodson law by managing stress levels. In situations where anxiety is likely to be high, try to manage it through relaxation techniques or mindfulness practices. Let's also tailor the arousal to the task. For simple tasks, aim for a slightly higher level of arousal to enhance focus. For complex tasks, strive for a more moderate level of arousal to avoid overthinking. Be aware of what happens when you try these things out and fine-tune it and find that middle ground right where it's the sweet spot, right where it balances perfect. We also want to recognize individual differences. Different people have different optimal arousal levels, like we talked about. Might be too much stimulation for one person, could be right for the other person. So just find your spot, find what works for you, and we'll go from there. Let's get a little bit into the science of performance anxiety now. What actually happens in your brain and your body is that your amygdala kind of gets hijacked, cortisol starts flowing through, we get a fight or flight response, and the body misinterprets the performance, whatever it might be, as a threat. And that could be because of the fear of judgment or failure or whatever else it might be. So that threat system gets really activated, and that's causing issues because it's changing things biologically for our body, and that's causing issues with our own performance and what we're doing. So if you're having questions about that, go back to that first episode and listen through that. And when you're thinking about the threat aspect, consider the performance or the judgment, whatever it might be, as the threat, and then kind of work through the whole system the same way, because it does work the same way. And that's why it's our first episode, because that's the basic of a lot of this stuff. Anxiety can feel uncontrollable, but is rooted in survival and the fight or flight system most of the time. This tends to activate the sympathetic nervous system, which leads to a release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones cause physical symptoms that we've talked about, like the increased heart rate, the rapid breathing, the sweating, trembling. All of that is part of that fight or flight response. The cognitive appraisals and the self-talk is also involved. Performance anxiety is often linked to how individuals perceive and appraise the situation. Negative thoughts, worries about negative evaluation, and focusing on potential failures can exacerbate the anxiety, and it leads to this loop or cycle of I'm going to mess up, and then I intensify the anxiety, and it leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy where it actually happens, and then I tell myself again and kind of reinforce I can't do these things, I'm just going to mess it up. So it creates a nasty loop you can get stuck in. It also impacts our performance. Performance anxiety can lead to a decline in mood, psychological stress, and ultimately impaired performance. So it's harder to perform well, and we feel kind of worse starting off and getting into these things. It's harder to get ourselves going. Excessive focus on the performance can interfere with the abilities of the brain to execute practice routines smoothly, leading to choking under pressure or something called the yips. So we don't want to focus too much on these things. The brain doesn't do well when it's overwhelmed and it's over focusing on stuff or it's overthinking things. Again, we need to find that balance so that we don't choke under pressure and things do work out in a positive way. For example, in sports, the prefrontal cortex might become overactive, interfering with the cerebellum and the motor cortex, which are responsible for executing learned movements. So these things kind of turn off, we can't use them. There's a lot of different brain regions involved. Research suggests that performance anxiety is associated with increased activity in the brain regions like the insular cortex, which is involved in processing feelings of threat and pain. Anxiety disorders, including performance anxiety, are also linked to heightened activation in the amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex, brain regions that play a role in emotional processing and the autonomic nervous system regulation. Coping mechanisms like strategies of mindfulness or deep breathing exercises, visualization, and positive self-talk can help manage and reduce the performance anxiety. We're going to have to build them up and not just use them sometimes or when we really need them. We got to use them and practice them and reinforce them as best we can, as much as we can. We can also prepare thoroughly for the performance. Setting realistic goals and practicing regularly can also build confidence and reduce our anxiety going into it. There are a lot of therapy techniques you can use that can help, like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be effective in helping individuals identify and change negative thought patterns associated with performance anxiety. So getting through that negative self-talk, the thought patterns that are keeping us stuck. And we'll go into some more skills and strategies that you can use a little bit later in the episode, very shortly. Performance anxiety in athletes versus professionals. I want to talk about this real quick because there is a lot of overlap in this, but there is some differences here too that we got to keep in mind. So parallels between stepping on the field and stepping into the boardroom. There's a lot of mindset, preparation, and regulation techniques that overlap that we could use in literally both, which is why I do work with both athletes and professionals because it's a lot of the same work, just the setting is different. Athletes, leaders, and creatives feel it stronger typically because stakes are higher. Their identity is typically tied to the team or the result or the company, and there's pressure from others to perform, and there's high expectations. So a lot of the same pressure leans on both athletes, professionals, leaders, creatives. They're just kind of managing it differently, and what they actually have to do is different. Both athletes and professionals experience the anxiety symptoms, like we talked about, the increased heart rate, sweating, difficulty concentrating, and much more. But the difference is that the context and the specific fears feeling the anxiety are different. Athletes focus on athletic performance, while professionals grapple with evaluation and social judgment in their respective fields. So it's a little different. One's more body focused, the other one is more cognitively focused, and the settings and the context of the situation, the specific fears are going to be different. But still, the underlying aspect and mechanisms that are working here are pretty similar, which is why a lot of the same tools are going to work for both. Now let's talk a little bit about those therapy techniques that we've been kind of alluding to. CBT skills for reframing anxious thoughts can be helpful, like we talked about, changing up the self-talk, the negative thought patterns we get stuck in. DVD strategies or skills like grounding or wise mind or opposite action or the distress tolerance module can really help us when managing these things as they come up. EMDR resourcing can be helpful for high-stakes pressure and deeper work for trauma-related performance anxiety, or even setting ourselves up with new beliefs or belief systems that we could use while we're going through the thing. This is one of the things that I do in my own work. I work with a high school football team, and I'm working on the sideline with them. So as issues pop up, I could actively do EMDR technique skills, very contained, of course, to that exact situation of what they're going through to help override it or set themselves up for success again and not get stuck on it. We can also take advantage of breathing and other regulation skills like box breathing, paced breathing, circular breathing. There's a lot of different things out there, but taking advantage of these things and finding things that work for you. We could also use visualization and mental rehearsal, like self-talk in the visualization episode that we talked about in the past. We went really deep into this for almost an hour. So if there is some good things in there that you could use, that might be a great spot to start. Just check that out first and see if that is helpful. But visualization and mental rehearsal can build us up. There's also routine and rituals. Anchoring pre-performance routines can be really helpful. That could be using anchor points. That could be pre-performance routines, like a certain way you handle things or get ready for something. It could be a little more traditional or something that you've just always done. It's more like a ritualistic type thing where it feels like you're setting yourself up mentally and emotionally to go perform at your best levels. Exposure therapy is also helpful. Practice under small stress before big moments, kind of slowly putting yourself out there, getting used to it, building yourself up. Just like stress inoculation, which is learning to train under pressure, kind of adjusting to it, showing yourself you can handle it, not having your body freak out as much, just feeling more comfortable in it. There's an idea we talk about a lot, which is when it's too hard for them, it's just right for us. This is a lot of the idea of building us up so we can manage these things, and it might be too much for them, so they start collapsing and falling apart. One may freeze when it's time to stand up to interject with a better idea in a meeting, and we need to take care of these things and do this work, because if you do freeze, you're going to lose out on that opportunity, because there may be someone else in that meeting that may take action when that time is right and get a promotion or get a lead on a project or just get ahead of the game because they took that time to stand up and interject. So if you're freezing and you're not getting things done, you're also missing out on opportunities that might be presenting themselves to you. So we have to do this work, because if we get caught up, you're going to probably miss out on things, and the things you're preparing for and doing the work for may not play out for you because you're not willing to put yourself out there for the performance, because we have to do things when other people are looking sometimes. I also want to talk about the idea of why when someone tells us to just relax doesn't work, because sometimes this is the go-to people go to because they don't understand what we're feeling when we're going through that performance anxiety, so they just tell us to calm down, and they don't understand how this doesn't really work. Telling someone with performance anxiety to just relax is ineffective and can even be counterproductive. This advice often backfires because it focuses on suppressing the anxiety response, which can intensify it through ironic process theory. Instead of trying to eliminate the feelings, a more helpful approach is to learn to reinterpret the physical sensations of anxiety as signals for preparation for performance. Here's why just relax doesn't work. Let's get a little deeper into it. Suppression is ineffective. Trying to suppress anxious feelings can be counterproductive. When you tell yourself to relax, you may end up focusing more on the anxiety, creating a cycle of increasing tension and frustration. You may even send yourself into a panic attack. Anxiety is also a natural response. It's not a bad thing. Performance anxiety is a normal physiological response to perceived threats, which is triggering the fight or flight response. So trying to suppress this natural reaction can backfire and actually cause more issues in our body. Reappraisal is a key part of it. A more effective strategy is to acknowledge the physical sensations and to reframe them as signals of your body preparing you for the challenge, maybe telling yourself that you're alive or whatever it might be, just kind of building yourself up, looking at it as a challenge and not letting it break you down. Breaking down myths and bad advice people get about anxiety to make sure we don't fall into these. One myth that people talk about is that only inexperienced people get performance anxiety, when the fact really is anxiety affects individuals of all experience levels, even seasoned performers. It's not a reflection of your skill or preparedness, it's just something that comes and it goes. Sometimes we got to get through it through exposure, sometimes it shows up for different reasons, sometimes it's because something went bad. There's a lot of things connected to it and it can't hit anyone. Another myth is that anxiety will always ruin your performance. The fact, on the other hand, is that while anxiety can be uncomfortable, it doesn't have to be a performance killer. In fact, channeled effectively, the heightened energy of anxiety can even enhance performance. You just got to know what you're doing. You got to take care of it. We can't be afraid of these things. We can't run away from these things. We just got to use them to our advantage and find the balance. Yet another myth is that if you're anxious, you'll never be confident, when in fact, confidence and anxiety can coexist. Confidence isn't the absence of anxiety, but rather the belief that you can still perform effectively despite feeling nervous. It's overcoming it, it's not succumbing to it. Another myth is that avoidance is the best way to deal with performance anxiety, when in fact, avoiding situations that trigger anxiety might provide short-term relief, but it can actually prevent you from developing coping mechanisms and might worsen your anxiety in the long run, because you're actively telling your brain that's too hard, I can't do that. So it builds it up next time we're trying to face it, and it makes it even harder to do. Sometimes the best thing to do is rip the Band-Aid off and just do the thing and not let it build up on us. Gradually confronting your fears is often necessary for building resilience and overcoming anxiety. We got to face our fears and deal with this stuff. Now let's talk a little bit about some bad advice. Sometimes people may say, just don't be nervous. This is unhelpful because it dismisses the reality of anxiety and can make individuals feel even worse for experiencing it. Kind of creates some shame and judgment. Instead of accepting and acknowledging anxiety is a more productive approach. So just accept that it's okay and it's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. We just want to channel it and set us up for success. Harsh criticism and negative self-talk can create a lot of problems too. Criticizing yourself only increases anxiety and damages confidence, making it even harder to perform well. Positive self-talk and affirmations are more effective strategies. Sometimes we just beat ourselves up and get really hard on ourselves because we think it's going to help us perform well, but in reality it doesn't. It just sets us up for more problems. If you believe that medication is the only way to manage anxiety, you might run into issues as well, because there is a lot of different ways to effectively manage anxieties, like therapies and lifestyle changes. While medication might be helpful for some individuals, even those with severe anxiety, it's not the only or even the first choice for somebody or everybody. So make sure to try out other things and see what works. Medication isn't bad, but it's not the one size fit all fix. Let's make sure to get other things in there and take care of it and be able to overcome it and not just run away from it through chemicals. What research shows actually reduces anxiety before performance. So we want to talk about some actual evidence-based back techniques that we can use. We could reappraise the anxiety as excitement. So trying to flip it around, look at it as a challenge, instead of saying like, this is going to go terrible, I'm really worried about how this is going to be. Tell yourself that you're excited or you're ready to see how this goes and see how far you've come. We can also use mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness-based approaches are very helpful with staying in that present body. Using body scan techniques and other things can help reduce some of the anxiety we're feeling and help promote acceptance and the ability to move through these things and move with these things instead of against these things. Positive mental imagery like visualization or rehearsal can be helpful. We talked about that in a past episode. Go check that out. Relaxation techniques like deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, circular breathing, grounding techniques, all sorts of different tools and techniques we've talked about. Make sure to check those out and try them out. Writing about the worries can be helpful. Studies have shown that journaling or writing down thoughts and concerns before a performance can help manage anxiety and improve performance, especially if we are highly anxious. Rituals are helpful to set us up, create a ground for us to stand on, a nice foundation so we can build up our belief and our confidence in ourselves. And another one is that self-confidence piece of just building up our ability to handle things and feeling like we got this and we can take care of the thing and not questioning ourselves or doubting ourselves. We want to try our best to use the anxiety as fuel instead of fear. Anxiety is just a signal at the end of the day. It's not a bad thing. It's not something we have to run away from. We just want to take it and use it in a way that's going to be helpful, and we want to build ourselves up. And we want to use some of that adrenaline to help improve our performance. This can be helpful because that adrenaline boosts our focus, our energy, and even sharpens our senses. But we also don't want to go too far with it and go past that optimal arousal stage that we talked about with the Yerkes-Dodson law. Once we go too far with it, we start to shut down, we start to collapse, things fall apart. So let's channel it and stay in that optimal range and keep trying the trial and error until you find that optimal range if you don't know what it is yet. Try and just transform that anxiety into energy, focus, and motivation. It's going to probably lead to some pretty cool things. There are some traps that increase the anxiety, so we want to be careful and look out for them. One of them is overthinking and perfectionism. Be careful doing that. Another is that all or nothing mindset. It's either everything goes well or everything goes bad. We can't do that either. We got to give ourselves acceptance and room to change. So we got to accept the things that are going well and look at the things that aren't working and try and fix those things too. We can't do both, or we can't do neither. We got to do both. Focusing on the outcome instead of the process can cause problems too. If we're just focusing on the fact that we lost, that's going to cause issues. Let's focus on the process and what worked and what didn't. And did this thing go just as bad as we think it did? Or maybe there was just a couple mistakes that led to some big issues. Avoidance, that pulling back makes anxiety stronger next time, so let's be careful of avoiding it and let's just try and face these things and deal with it. I know it sucks, but it's going to be better in the long run for you. And there's a lot of cultural stigma around failure as well, especially for athletes and high achievers, so sometimes it's hard to do. So let's just manage these things best we can. Let's not get too caught up in it. Let's help ourselves move forward. Pre-game mindset, routines that calm the storm. There's a lot of things you can do pre-game to help build yourself up. It could be a routine that you've always practiced, so it just kind of calms things back down. It could be using some of these techniques right before you get out there to make sure you have that calm, focused energy. It could be doing some stuff with teammates or coworkers who's involved with the project or the competition and helping calming things down together, kind of getting that joint relaxation and net of safety. We can also talk a little bit about imposter syndrome versus performance anxiety, because we talked about imposter syndrome in a past episode. So what's the difference? While performance anxiety and imposter syndrome are related, they are distinct. Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments in the fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of their competence. Performance anxiety, on the other hand, is a specific type of anxiety triggered by the prospect of performing in front of others, leading to physical and mental symptoms like sweating, trembling, or negative self-talk. Anxiety can also push us to overtrain or overprepare, where we do too much and we push ourselves too far, and that can cause issues with our body physically, and that can cause issues with us burning out and not being ready for the situation because we're not relaxed or coping or setting ourselves up enough for dealing with it. And if it does go bad, we're going to cope with that failure and rebuild that confidence. In another episode, we're going to talk more about these things. So we're just going to keep building on top of dealing with failure and managing this stuff. But for right now, let's experience that setback and just significantly and how it can significantly impact your confidence and trigger or even worsen performance anxiety. If something goes wrong, sometimes it builds up that idea it's going to happen again, and it can cause issues and worries and fears and even paranoia. Something we can do to deal with that, though, is to acknowledge those emotions, try and reframe the experience, and implement strategies to rebuild your self belief and get kind of back out there, get back on that horse. So let's revisit just real quick before we finish things up. Why do some people choke and others thrive? Some people thrive under pressure while others choke due to a combination of individual differences in personality, cognitive processes, and the way they perceive and react to high stakes situations. Some people could practice deep breathing, kind of take advantage of these skills like calming the body down. Sometimes it's visualizing success or using, different techniques for that self talk and that mental rehearsal that can build us up. We can also develop a pre performance routine to build us up and set us up for success, get ready to go. We could reframe that nervous energy and not fear it, but kind of look forward to it and almost embrace it. We can tie it all together. It's not about eliminating nerves, but learning how to use them. It's about understanding that fight or flight response and setting up our body to succeed, not to collapse. We got to recognize the anxiety, get the support we need, and use the tools that we discussed, and watch your life change and perform at the highest levels with the world watching. You guys can do these things. You can do some amazing stuff if you let yourself get out there and try these things and build yourself up and not fear the anxiety, not fear the fear. Let's just do the things and show yourself what you can do. We could surprise ourselves with how far we can take these things if we let ourselves go out there and we try and dare greatly. Resilient minds build premier results. Let's put ourselves out there. Let's build ourselves up. Let's take care of these things. Recognition is the first step. If you see things happening, let's deal with it. Let's notice these things. Let's reflect on stuff and notice what we're doing. It's going to help us on the long run. If this is helpful in any way, make sure to share the episode. If there's somebody that you think could get some benefit from this, let's send it their way and let's help them out as well. That's the goal of putting all this out there. We want to help people out. If you did get something beneficial and you thought it was awesome or, insightful, make sure to leave us a review as well. That helps us get these things out there. And it's really helpful for us to just hear what you guys are thinking. And you can always reach out to us directly and let us know how things are going. Because I make it a point to give you actual tools to find success in your life. I love to hear how it's going and what's happening. Because I want to know that these things are working for you. And if there are certain ways we got to tailor these things to help out more, I'd love to do that. So make sure to stay connected and reach out and let me know how it's going. If something was helpful, tell me, because I'd love to talk about it and hear how it's going. So if you do have something you want to say, whether it is a topic you want me to cover or something you want to talk about, you can reach out to me through an email at tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name spelled Mahler. You could text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. We have the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name, which is both premier_performance_Reno. So make sure to connect on there. And the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page with the same name, Premier Performance LLC. On top of that, we have our Twitter or X account at Premier Reno LLC. And you could reach out to us on our company page, our website at premierperformancereno.com. Make sure to check us out. Make sure to follow along. We want you guys a part of all this so you get all these episodes and all the content as it comes out, because we put out information every day and we put out the podcast episode every week. So we're trying to build you guys up and give you everything you need. And to go further with that, next week we're going to dive into handling setbacks and failures, because sometimes that's the hardest part of all this. And like I said, we're going to get deeper into that then. I know we touched on it very briefly this episode, but I really want to dive into it for a full episode next week, and that's what we're going to do. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, go have some fun, live your life, put yourself out there. Don't be scared of being vulnerable. Take those risks, bet on yourself, and let's see where it takes us. I'd love to hear about you guys and how it's all going, so let me know. Otherwise, go have a great time, and if you need anything, let me know, and I'll be here to help support you guys as I can. Have a great week.